Thank you all very much for joining this webinar on strategic portfolio management with Atlassian within the Atlassian ecosystem. My name is Bryan Darr, and I am the global head of cloud here at Valiantys. Valiantys is not Atlassian, but we are a platinum solution partner within the Atlassian ecosystem. We are a global partner with Atlassian, and we do all kinds of implementations, transformations, migrations, optimizations, basically, I like to say all the Asians. So that's why you're hearing from a partner. And the nice thing about hearing from a partner is we can also give you more information than any one particular app vendor can, because we see things across a wide variety of clients and industries. So I'm also a safe practice consultant, an Atlassian certified expert, and also just general fan of Atlassian and better ways of working. So hopefully our time together, which will be up to an hour, but hopefully faster, will be beneficial to you. Basically today, we are going to go through an overview of strategic portfolio management. We're going to then talk about different Atlassian core products like Jira Product Discovery, Atlassian Plans. And then we're going to talk about app ecosystem options for strategic portfolio management, including Structure Advanced, Big Picture and Big Picture Enterprise, Jira Align, and then also, some next steps that you can take. We're also going to cover connecting to other tools. Maybe you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, but you're still using Atlassian to manage sort of higher level things. There's a lot of options out there. And so we just want to bring all that together, give you the lay of the land, help you understand what options exist, and then you can make the decision that's right for your company. And then, of course, we're going to talk, we'll do Q&A at the end. So let's get started. So why do we need to do strategic portfolio management? Why do we need to make these things visible? Why do we need more efficient tools? Well, generally, we want to have the outcomes of aligning our work to our enterprise strategy. Oftentimes, our teams are disconnected from the enterprise direction. And so we want to have that thread from the team all the way up to the C-suite so that we all know that we're heading where we want to be heading. Oftentimes, teams, projects, programs, entire departments, entire divisions, we need to visualize capacity versus demand. We want to have clear dependency management so we don't have any fire drills, so that we're not challenged with delays. We want to be predictable and prioritized. This kind of goes to point number one there. We want to make sure that we're working on the things that matter to the business. And of course, in this day and age, I'm sure I sound like a broken record saying this, but everything's changing so fast. People's 10-year plans are no longer valid. Their 5-year plans aren't valid. Their 3-year plans might not be valid. And so there is a constant reprioritization exercise going on. And we want to be able to make that visible, have that cascade down throughout the enterprise so that we can react to the market as fast as possible and faster than our competition. We also want stakeholder and team visibility. It's pretty important to have to basically shortcut communication within our tools. We want to make sure that the data is there so that we can visualize it on dashboards, that our stakeholders see that their priorities are being acted upon, or if they're not being acted upon, why. And hopefully that will then facilitate a better conversation. We want the team to have the goals visible because everybody works better when they're driving towards a common and understood goal. We want to reduce fire drills. Poor dependency management, poor prioritization results in a real loss of morale. I think that everybody can be heroic for a short time, but at some point, when you're just constantly fighting fires and when your business is run on heroics and not people that can predictably reproduce over time, that becomes a real challenge, and then you start to see churn and attrition. So we want to reduce fire drills through this too. And of course, we also want to mitigate risk, making our risks visible in our systems, surfacing them, talking about them, mitigating them, roaming them, if you like, is a very important piece of this. And so the tools that we're going to talk about all support all of these outcomes. All right. Implementation considerations. Now, if you're here, you're probably already using Atlassian, at least at the team level. You may not be using it at the program or at the portfolio level or at the enterprise level, but depending on where you are, um, the implementation's generally the same. It's just a factor of scale. So the first piece that I want to talk about that's really important is people, then process, then tools. I'm sure we've all heard of the people process tools iron triangle, and maybe a lot of us also agree that it's maybe not a triangle, but a particular order. But I want to reemphasize that unless you have the upstream piece, the downstream piece won't work at all. So if you have the wrong people, you probably won't even have the right processes, and then the tools don't matter. So we need to start with the right people, and that works with training people and making sure that they're in the right positions. Uh, Once we have the right people, then we can build a good process, and a good process should be effectively doable analog. Um, it should be clearly understood. It should be clearly documented. A good process with a bad tool will have a not great outcome, but a bad process with a good tool is just going to accelerate you off the road into the ditch. The tools are really downstream of all of this. And since we're talking about tools today, I want to emphasize that the implementation of this really is about making sure that your processes are right. Uh, Atlassian tools can be spun up in, I think, less than a minute now. But the human factor of changing the way people work, bringing them along, showing them, casting the vision, motivating them to change, helping them through that change. That's a big, big piece of this. And that's why implementations generally take so long, and why if they fail, the reason they fail is, it's a people problem, because the people weren't brought through the process. So we want to make sure that we have the right people. We want to make sure that our processes make sense and are aligned. And then we put those processes into our tools, which is what we as an implementation company do. At the implementation end, and at the transformation end, we really go upstream and we help the people and the processes transform. That was a lot. You can also start with a smaller group within the portfolio. I love this idea. I'm sure you probably do too. It's nice to find sort of a leader group. I like to call it a lighthouse group, the lighthouse on the hill. You find a group that wants to change, that wants to work better, that wants to use better tools and implement their better processes in those better tools. And so if you find that group, looking for volunteers, I've heard them called tiger teams, skunkwork teams, whatever you want to call them. Send that group of pioneers out, and then have them report back to the company the great changes, the efficiencies, the better communication that they're experiencing, the reduced churn, all of it. You can really showcase that. And then that will inspire more people to head in that direction as well. They'll get in their wagons and head towards there too. You can also do all of this with, I would actually say, minimal changes to the team layer of the organization. A lot of strategic portfolio management is really about setting up intake and prioritization above the team level. The teams have to work on their own processes. They need to be able to be more efficient in their development, or if it's a business team, in their planning, in their documentation. But when we talk about this overall strategic portfolio management system, you can actually largely, I'm probably going to regret saying this, but I think you can largely leave the team layer as is. It's really hard to come in and change the whole business and every team all at the same time. And what you can do is, speaking from a Jira perspective, at the story or task and at the epic layer, at the story layer, you can just leave that kind of as is. You really need to start unifying things at the epic layer, and especially at the layer above. The epic layer is where management from above talks to teams from below, and that's where they meet. And so that's where you need to start having standardized fields, fields for reporting, required fields for reporting, etc. But the team's workflow and their general process, that doesn't have to change. And I'm overemphasizing this because a lot of people, when they experience a transformation that is imposed upon them, there's a lot of resistance. And if you can lead with, we're not out to change the way you work, we're out to change the way that everything trickles up and connects, I think you can get a lot more support from the team, especially if you show them. So we can start with minimal changes to the team. and really start changing at the epic layer and up. You also have to organize at the leadership level. I've heard that a lot of transformations, sometimes they start from the ground up, sometimes they start from the top down. The ground up ones will only ever get so far, and they will fizzle out because they don't have upper level support. So if you are going to transform a portfolio, you really need the leadership level to be aligned and agree on what's going on. So that is discovery and planning out what we're going to build and testing it and building a proof of concept and making sure that we like what we're seeing. Then we can start rolling it out within those specified pioneering teams. Hopefully, what I'm saying is preaching to the choir. If not, we can also talk about it later too, if you'd like, because this is a fun topic. All right. So now let's talk about how you can implement this in the tools within the Atlassian ecosystem, which is designed to accelerate teams and accelerate companies. So there's actually a couple of layers. There's intake management, there's work management, there's portfolio management, and there's strategic management. If you think about in and then working your way up in the layers in the company. And so I'm going to talk about each of these groups, and I'm going to start with intake management. So managing a portfolio, it starts with good ideas. And good ideas start from perhaps a plethora of many ideas that need to be filtered out. Some of the best ideas come from the people right on the front lines, talking to your customers, delivering to your customers, selling to your customers. So we want to create a place for them to bring in ideas. And that is now really best done within the Atlassian ecosystem within Jira Product Discovery, which is a really lovely tool. And I should have capitalized that here. I apologize, but that's an actual proper name of a tool. Jira Product Discovery is really Atlassian's intake and prioritization flagship product. If you have been in the Atlassian ecosystem for a long time, you've already set up a pretty robust system connecting probably Jira Service Management or some kind of external form into a Jira project where you do this prioritization. If you haven't seen JPD, Jira Product Discovery, we're going to do a live demo of it in a moment. Fingers crossed, live demos are always a little dangerous. But it is really incredible for intake and prioritization. The other piece that you'll probably use is Jira Service Management if you're really sticking to pure Atlassian intake. The reason why I say this is because a lot of companies will already be using some kind of JSM, Jira Service Management, internal employee portal for reporting tickets, reporting ideas. And especially if you're dealing with like the software side of things, somebody may be submitting something that's an idea or an incident. You're not quite sure when it first goes in, and you especially don't want to force your end users to have to classify and triage tickets on their own. They might not know if it's a new idea or a feature request or a bug. So you want to put it into some sort of central intake. If your central intake isn't in JSM, that's okay, no problem. All of this can be hooked up from external tools. Let me zoom into this diagram for a second and show you what all of that looks like within the ecosystem together. So we would start up at the Jira Service Management or wherever you do your corporate intake from, and we submit a thing and we triage that thing. If it's not a new idea, if it's not a new feature request or something that we need to consider dedicating resources to build, we're going to move it to the appropriate service team's queue. Maybe it's a bug, maybe it's operating as intended. And so we're gonna drop that idea in Jira Product Discovery. And sorry about the zooming and the colors. I realize that that's kind of hard to read, but this dark layer in the middle is Jira Product Discovery. And so we have an idea, which is like a work item in a JPD project. That idea gets reviewed for additional information, just like your normal intake process. It gets initial approval, it gets deeper discovery, it gets prioritized, it gets roadmapped, and it gets built at some point. But the tracking at the stakeholder intake prioritization level, that all stays in JPD now. And the work that your teams are going to do, that gets tracked somewhere else. Maybe in Jira if your teams are highly organized. Maybe in Trello. Honestly, it could be tracked in spreadsheets, but the idea maintains constancy throughout its life cycle within JPD, and the stakeholder can come to JPD because it's really designed for that, and they can zoom in, follow up, see the delivery progress. We'll see all of that in a moment. And so when you hit discovery, that's going to wind up in someone's backlog, probably in Jira. And so we're going to track that discovery work down here. Once it gets discovered and we fully understand what the work is, then we're going to prioritize it in Jira Product Discovery. And it's got some great formula fields, custom formulas, whatever you do to appropriately prioritize your company's work. It then gets thrown on a roadmap. And then that work gets planned again in that team's backlog. And then it gets executed, it gets completed, and then we close out the idea. So that's how these three layers, intake, stakeholder management and prioritization, and work, all fit together within this system. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the Q&A module, and we're going to have a deeper Q&A at the end of the webinar as well. All right, so we have intake, we have prioritization. At some point, we're going to manage our work. This is the piece that everybody really knows about already. And you're going to manage your work in Jira and Jira Service Management. If it's repeatable, on-call based, queue-based work, we're going to do it within Jira Service Management. If it's more project-based work, team-based work, we're going to do that within Jira. This is sort of a map of strategy, planned work, and support work all fitting together. The right side is Jira Service Management. The middle is Jira. The left side is Atlassian's platform goals, which have been pulled out of a product that was formerly called Atlas, but now it's a goal repository where you can track OKRs and whatever else your company goals are. And I'm going to cover that more in a minute. But the idea is you would have support work come in as a service request or an incident or a problem or a change. That work can generate development work over in Jira, or it can generate an idea that's going to land in Jira Product Discovery for future work and prioritization. If you're not looking at that side of things, if you're just looking at the planned work in the middle, we're doing that in Jira. Our teams have their tasks, their stories, their bugs, their spikes, their subtasks. Those roll up to epics at the program layer. Yeah. And then those roll up to initiatives at the portfolio layer. And then we can link those epics and initiatives to goals. So that's how that all fits together. And then we come down to our portfolio management. We're going to do that through Jira Plans, which is where we're going to be able to structure. Sorry, I didn't mean to cover up portfolio management. We're going to be able to structure and see the delivery of our work mapped and planned out, usually over the next quarter. And if we want to go more advanced, if we want to expand out into, let's say, a Gantt chart, then we're going to be using Structure and formerly Structure Gantt. Now it's called Structure Advanced, or Big Picture. Those are the two internal ecosystem apps. One is from Tempo now. The other is from AppFire. And those are going to be your Gantt chart add-ons if you need that additional Gantt chart function. Jira Plans is a pretty good substitute, but it's not a Gantt chart. And we're going to dive into that more in a live tool demo in a moment. And then you have your strategy. We hinted at the strategy up here with our goals, but you have Atlassian platform goals, which allow effectively an infinite hierarchy of goal setting. So you can set goals at the C-suite, cascade them down into your departments. You can also have separate team goals that roll up or don't roll up. And the goal function is pretty impressive. You can do monthly check-ins. You can report progress on goals. You can tie goals to work. You can tie goals to external documentation. But what I love is that rather than having goals just show up in people's quarterly reviews or in a spreadsheet somewhere, this is taking all advantage of what Atlassian does well by nature and putting it in a central, visible repository. You can restrict restrict the visibility to if you need to, because I understand that some company goals are not for general consumption. But for the most part, you want your goals visible so that everybody can look up the layers and see why they're working on something. Maybe we're driving towards a 10% market share increase. Maybe we're driving towards better NPS scores. Maybe we're driving towards more monthly active users. Whatever it is, it's nice to tack that on the wall and point everybody to it. Then there's Atlassian's newest tools, Focus and Talent. These were announced about a year ago, and maybe a little bit before if you were more in the know within the ecosystem. Focus takes goals and adds in some other strategic layers, including finance. Let's see, it connects goals, teams, work, and finance together and packages them up in something called a focus area. So if your focus area is, let's say, AI, all right, what are our goals in AI? What are the teams that are working on it? What's the work that they're doing? And how much money are we spending on it? And so Focus wraps all of that up. Focus actually takes a lot of what was in Jira Align, what is still in Jira Align, if you're familiar with that product, and I'll talk about that later today too. And it pulls it out and just rolls it straight into the Atlassian ecosystem, into the stack natively, as opposed to going to a separate tool. Talent is their newer, pretty new talent management app. So you can connect this to things like Workday, and you can get a list of all of your employees, and you can tie them into the work and the teams of the work that's being done. So talent and focus kind of go hand in hand there, where you can see the people that match up to the roles that support your organizational goals. We're not going to go into a deep dive of talent or focus here, but we do have other webinars and for things around that. And if you can't make one of those, no problem. There's a LinkedIn QR code at the end of this, and we can just schedule a call and we can do a demo if you'd like. Let me talk briefly about goals, though. This is just a nice visual that shows how goals tie together. So basically, you can have your custom goals hierarchy, however you manage your goals, and then every goal basically prompts you to update it once a month. How are we doing against our goal? And those goals, like you saw in the other image, they attach or can attach to work being tracked in Jira. You can link them to an initiative, you can link them to an epic. You can even link them to a spreadsheet if you're tracking your work in a spreadsheet, or if you're tracking your work in Trello. But you can see where the work, no matter what system you're doing it in, can still be tied to the goals repository that you can make visible to your teams. Lastly, I want to talk quickly about, before we dive into live tools demos, I want to talk about integrations with Microsoft Project. There are many companies that are an MS Project shop, and that's great. That can still interact well with Atlassian. There are two ecosystem connectors that will allow you to tie Microsoft Project work over into the Atlassian ecosystem. So, I've got a spreadsheet in Trello here. You could just add another bubble for Microsoft Project if you want, or even, I don't know, like a whiteboard with some stickies could also be where you're tracking your work. And you can link that work from Microsoft Project over to Jira epics and initiatives and or goals if you need to. Okay, so that is sort of the academic background of all of this. Now we're going to dive in and we're going to look at Jira Product Discovery, Jira Plans, Structure Advanced, Big Picture, and then we're going to go down to the Q&A. So let's hope the live demo works. Here we are in a There we go. Here we are in a demo system with a lot of fake data, and we are starting our walk through Jira Plans, which looks like this. Let me hop back for just a brief moment, though, and talk about Jira Plans. So Jira Plans is a cross-project. Actually, I'm not even sure if I like the phrase road mapping anymore, because Atlassian I think rightfully calls roadmaps, stakeholder-facing plans of roughly when we, relative to each other, plan on getting work done. Jira Plans is more about the scheduling of the work that supports what's going to be done on the roadmap. It's a fine difference, and I know that this looks like a roadmap, and but really they are calling this a timeline view now. But anyway, it's a timeline visualization of work that exists in Jira. It looks kind of like a Gantt chart, but you should know it is not a Gantt chart. It doesn't have a lot of the core features of a Gantt chart that you might be expecting, such as critical path or first start to finish, finish to start to start, and finish to finish connections. Things don't move when you slide out dependencies. But it is a good visualization tool, especially if you're working in sprints, because you can see when the work's going to get done and you can then report better on the delivery of that work. So let me just dive into that tool really quick, and then we'll come back and talk about some deciding factors. So this is the core view of Jira Plans. It's called the timeline view. And basically, in a plan, which is a container, you put in the work that you want to track. In all three tools that we go through today, you're going to see that each of them has a standard container structure. It's called a structure. Big picture, it's called a plan. No, sorry, excuse me. It's not called a plan. But each of these products has a container. And in that container, you choose the work that you're going to visualize in that container. So in this situation, if I go to plan settings for a moment, we can look at work in your plan, and you can see that we're pulling in 3 different teams' boards and also all of our company initiatives. So we've chosen that, and I can now choose different pre-saved views, which are different configurations of the work breakdown structure over here on the left, where we can go from any layer in the hierarchy all the way down as far as we'd like to go. And we can even choose the layers, the hierarchy to visualize. We can then choose what fields we want to show in those hierarchical layers, and then we can view all of that on a timeline. Now, if you're a spreadsheet fan, you can also switch to the list view over here and just view all of your work in a list. And let me show that in a different view where we can get many more fields on the board. So this view, I'm just focusing on initiatives and epics. This may be more of a leadership view. I don't want them to get in the weeds about when the stories and tasks are going to be done. And we want to show them just, the initiatives they care about. But I can switch to, let's say, an epic view where we go from epic down to story. And this is more for the program and the team layer, where we can see all of our stuff in a table. And then when we're ready, we can pull in our timeline and we can see all of our crazy, spaghetti string dependencies. And we can see the red ones that are misscheduled. This one's overlapping by 14 days. We can see the gray ones that are appropriately scheduled. So basically, you can choose the view that you want to visualize. And you can also, within that view, you can set what you want to filter, how you want to color that view, how you want to modify how things show up. Do you want the spaghetti strings? Do you want to see something else? It's a very helpful way to view your work. And there's one more view that's really kind of crazy, but very helpful, and that is a view that I labeled capacity planning. This is the same data, the same information, but instead what we're seeing is we're seeing our work here, and we're seeing it scheduled into different sprints. And this is the danger of a live demo. What we should be seeing, and we're not, which is frustrating, is we're not seeing capacity bars up here, which exist. And I'm so sorry, I don't have them here. I can tell you why. This is because we don't have the work appropriately assigned to a team. So if I throw this into the beta team, now we can see the beta team, and I got to come to the view settings, and we want to see capacity. Again, this is the danger of a live view. Basically, what you have to do is you have to have the work assigned to, oh, there it is. There it is. All right, it's showing up now. Okay. So when you assign the work to a team, you get these sprint blocks showing up here. If it's a Kanban team, it's blocks by week. And here we see a default capacity, which we can change in the team profile, or we can change per sprint. And then we can see what is assigned to that sprint. And so currently, I don't have any work seemingly assigned to that sprint. Let me assign this one to the beta team. There we go. So now you see it cranking up. And if I were to over assign to a given sprint, this eventually turns red, as you would expect in a capacity visualization. So, and for example, here, if I say, "Hey, everyone's on vacation. We're half our team's on vacation," well, now it's red, and now I know that I need to move some work out of this. So this is all visible within a plan. This is team level capacity. It's not individual level capacity. Individual capacity for, let's say, constrained resources can be done in a different tool, which I'm going to show you next. Some other helpful functions within Jira Plans. And by the way, Jira Plans is included for free if you're on the Jira Cloud Premium tier. And also, if you're on Data Center, which is going away in a couple of years, Jira Plans is also included natively. Next, we have the program view. And what the program view does is, and this is a very confusing view at first if you're not used to a program board. If you're used to like PI planning, big room planning, you've seen a program board. It's where we throw epics up on the board and we put our dependency strings across them. We see our sprints by our teams and we look at the dependencies across them. That's what this is. So here we can take work and we can assign it to a particular team in a particular sprint. So I'm going to take, like, let's say this story, and I'm going to say alpha team's going to do that in sprint 3. Great. And then if there is a dependency between those, we can add a dependency and we can say this is blocked by, and I would need to see what this particular guy is. That is beta 26. Great. So I can add my dependency beta 26. Great. And then we can choose to visualize the spaghetti strings if we want. But if we wrongly schedule these, oh, there we go. Yeah. So if it's inappropriately scheduled, you get that that red string telling you that you need to move it around. So that's the program view, as you would expect if you're used to program planning across multiple teams, across multiple sprints and or weeks. There's a calendar view. So you can choose the layer of work or the type of work that you want to see and where it's going to be visualized across the weeks. This one's a little more challenging unless you're really looking down at the story layer or the task layer. Everything extends for weeks and months and possibly years at the higher layers. So this is less helpful unless you're looking down at the lower layers. Teams and releases is just about team and release management. I'm not going to dive into that too much, but what I do want to highlight is this dependency view. This is as close to a critical path view as you're going to get natively within Jira. And what it is if we zoom out, and they keep making this better, which is quite nice, you can see all of your work laid out in a dependency map. And you can even group them by, let's say, different teams, which I find quite helpful. So we can see here that that the beta team has some work that's blocking alpha team. And so we are going to want to make sure that we schedule with the beta team before we want to start. Before alpha, works on this piece right here, for example. Yeah, so you can group by different areas. You can roll up to other layers in the hierarchy, which I find really cool. So we can see where the children dependencies of all of these epics relate, but at an epic level, etc. The last piece that I want to talk about within Jira Plans natively is that every change that I make in here, and you can see me reassigning work to different teams here. I'm getting this little green flag right here. All of those changes have not actually been made in Jira yet. They have been stored in in a change log, and then I can come up here and I can push those changes into Jira. But what's nice is I can filter, I can choose which changes to push, which changes to clear. I can discard changes if I want to, so that only when we're satisfied with our plan are we going to come here and push our changes into Jira, which will then update, people's boards and their backlogs, etc. And if you really like scheduling and like planning out scenarios, you can actually create different scenarios within plans, and those data changes will save to different scenarios. So this one's changing to our quote best case scenario, and I can also make a worst case scenario, and then I start assigning work to a different team. And those are saved in red, which is represented by our scenario. And so I can choose which changes to push, scenario A or scenario B. Yeah. So that is the magic of Jira plans. And some deciding factors are that, again, it's native with Jira Premium or DC, so you're not paying anything more for it. You can estimate on this with story points or with time tracking. It's great for sharing visualizations. I actually didn't even talk about that. This share button here is lovely. You can drop these visualizations within Confluence, and so they're always updated. You can drop them in an iframe. You can export the data into a CSV and drop and do lots of graphs and charts with it for your reporting if you want. Very, very easy to share visualizations. It's got the program board we talked about. It's got the calendar. It does team level, but not individual level capacity. But it has no critical path. It doesn't save baselines. It doesn't do earliest start, latest finish kind of stuff. And it doesn't have a cross-plan resource view. So if you need to see the people that are assigned across multiple plans and look at their individual capacity, again, you can't do that within plans. Up next, we're going to talk about Structure Advanced, but first let me just check the Q&A. Can you confirm that what I'm sharing is the Atlassian Cloud and Jira version? Yes, this is Atlassian Cloud that I'm sharing, but again, plans is available in Data Center. But yeah, this is all Jira Cloud. You can actually tell by the URL .atlassian.net. Thanks for the question. All right, so now let's talk about your other, cross portfolio, I'm sorry, cross program, cross team scheduling methods. Oh, you know what? Yeah, okay. I realized I didn't talk about Jira Product Discovery. I will save that to the end, and I'm going to continue comparing these really quick. So we have Structure Advanced, and Structure is one of my other favorite apps within the Atlassian ecosystem. So we can come to Apps and Structure, and what I have here is a demo of Structure that is using the same data that you saw a moment ago. It's all the same information, but instead it has some additional fields that I can add that I find very, very useful. So for example, we can come in here and we can add in custom formula features. So we can make like a markdown colored field like I have here in my demo screen. So we can have it show a green bar if it was updated within a week. We can have it show a yellow bar if somebody's marked the project at risk. So you can really add these things into custom formula fields to really make a report pop when you look at it, which is quite helpful. And the most important thing, though, that I want to show within Structure that is different from Jira Plans is that it is an actual Gantt chart. So you can see everything here. You can break items down. You can expand them out. You can make really important. Oh, apparently I can't link there. Let's try this one. There we go. So you can make standard Gantt connections. And you saw that when I did that, it actually pushed this one forward. So um, yeah, this is what you would expect in a Gantt chart. And when I zoom into that dependency, you can see all of the Gantt related dependencies: finish to start, finish to finish, start to start, start to finish. These are all actually links back in Jira, but they behave as Gantt dependencies here on this Gantt chart. Two other things that I want to show, well, three other things that are really important about structured Gantt. You can save multiple baselines. So if you want a baseline, you can get that line underneath everything, and we can see that this was pushed off from its original baseline in the plan. So that's really important for a lot of people. That's not natively available in Jira plans. The next is the resource view. So this is what you would expect. I don't have any data in here, unfortunately, but for each of my workers here, if they're assigned to a particular piece of work, so let's come here and let's just open this up, scroll to the task. There we go. So you can see that Bryan is assigned to these particular work items, and Bryan is actually oversubscribed. He's got 18.9 hours of work scheduled for this particular iteration. That's not going to work, so we need to reschedule Bryan. And you can view this in hours or in a percentage as well. So we can see that I'm, 236% overscheduled in that. So the individual capacity functions of this are something that a lot of people are looking for. So yeah, let me just come. Oh, sorry. One more great thing about structure that I think is an often overlooked setting is this slice thing within a structure setting. You can create a slice based on JQL, and then you can give that slice its own particular Gantt settings. So if you want to have one team have a particular story point to hour ratio, which is, I know, an agile no-no, but a planning necessity, you can do that. And then you can make a slice for a different team and give them a different ratio. So you can get very granular with your planning with slices within structure. There's a lot more features, but this is kind of the basics. This is the level up that a lot of people are looking for in their strategic portfolio planning. I see a question. Can you briefly elaborate on Jira Align and how the tools fit into the tool landscape? Yeah, Jira Align is a separate program that sits above and off to the side of Jira, and it is Atlassian's flagship strategic portfolio management tool. We actually do a whole webinar on that. I know that Kristen dropped a link in earlier, but if you go to our training services, you'll find, if we do public training, and then if we find there's a webinar on that we do, Jira Align Bootcamp we do, and Jira Align User Academy we do, and we also have a webinar on it. Oh yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so that'll be dropped in the chat. But basically, Jira Align reads and writes from Jira data, but it gives you a higher level. And what I recommend is joining that particular webinar, and you'll get a deep dive into that. So you should see that, but then you can compare it to the other tools that we're reviewing today and see which one fits. They're also taking a lot of the Jira Align features and rolling them into the Atlassian stack natively. So if you want to talk about that, when I show the LinkedIn, QR codes, feel free to contact me, and we can talk more about where the future of that's going, and talk about specifically what tools might fit your organization the best. All right, so why would you choose structure? Slices allow for granular behavior. Structures themselves are pretty cool because you can do those custom fields. You can do team and individual level resourcing, but it doesn't have skills. I think a lot of people are looking for, when they get to individual capacity, they also want to say, all right, well, this can only be done by an architect. And so show me all the architects, the people that have this particular skill matched to this particular work item. It doesn't do skills. It does do multiple baselines though. It does something called resource leveling, but only in DC. I think they're going to move that to cloud at some point. Basically, you can auto schedule and flatten a resources scheduling. You can do duration based on estimates. I didn't really show that, but if you click in here, you can auto schedule or you can manual schedule, and you can have the estimate and its relationship to who it's assigned to determine how long it's going to take. So that's a piece that a lot of people are looking for. Unlike Jira, last time I checked, the cloud version doesn't do sandboxes. So when I change things, it's actually live in the tool. I'm not as big of a fan of that. The DC version does do sandboxes, though. And it is also great for sharing visualizations. Looking at the time, ooh, we're getting close. All right, let me talk really quickly about big picture, and then I'll go back to Jira Product Discovery, which is great for intake and prioritization, like we said. Big picture is a similar thing to Structure Advanced. It includes this Gantt module. You see your work breakdown structure, but it's got a couple of other really useful features. So let me hop over and show that off really quick. Big picture. They just added a financial oversight module too, which is really cool, but it's not loaded in our system despite that flag showing. So one of my favorite things about big picture, and again, it's similar to structure, is that you can have different boxes, which are like a container of work, and you can arrange those boxes to behave in a way that is oh, somebody changed my test data. That's frustrating. You can have like an agile program. Um, or you can have a hybrid thing. So like here we have a portfolio broken down into programs, broken down into program increments, like you would in Agile. Or we can have the same program partially broken down into a traditional project that's broken down into stages. And then you can load the work into those stages or into those increments, and you can run Agile alongside Waterfall, for example, which is pretty helpful. But if I hop into my demo portfolio, you can see that this is also very, very similar to what we've been looking at before. I'm looking at the same data here. So I see my initiatives broken down into epics, broken down into stories, and I gotta find where the work is because I think our data is kind of old. But there we go. Yeah. So you can see all of this work broken out as a Gantt chart. As you would expect, we can connect dependencies, we can tie work underneath, and you can see those same, start to finish work. Um, and big picture also differentiates between the kind of dependencies that are native to Jira, which they call soft dependencies. So it's just a visualization dependency showing like a developer, hey, this one blocks this one, as opposed to your hard Gantt dependencies, which are, really enforcing that this one must end before this one starts. Big Picture also does resourcing, which is great. So you can do your individual level resourcing here. So very similar. Big Picture also comes with some other modules. It comes with its own risk module. You can also track risk using other apps, but Big Picture is great for risk tracking. But let's look at deciding factors. So we have a risk module. It also has program boards. It has calendars. It has the Gantt chart. It does have cross-plan resource views, which is very important. And it also has skills, which is a thing that I think a lot of people are looking for. So if we dive into, let's say, this particular bug, you can see that the big picture skills module I can open up as I'm scheduling and or building this, and I can say that this item requires a developer and a developer or a tester. Oh, here, let's just go tester. And then once I set that, we can then have it find the perfect match, and it'll hunt out workload capacity and other things, and it'll find the right person that has that skill that's available when we want to do this work. So it makes it easier to pair skills. Again, that's some pretty granular work though, and unless you have a highly detailed requirement for that, it is a lot of overhead to manage. It has resource leveling. Um, you can ignore this one. Limited configuration differentiation within a box. Yeah, it's slightly less functional to me than I found. Uh, Sorry, I totally just lost my train of thought when I saw that chat. Um, it is less granular than structure slices in my experience. And sharing visualizations requires another add-on, which I find a little frustrating. Okay, let me show Jira Product Discovery really quick because I forgot to show that earlier. I just want to show the intake function of it for a moment. So if I come down to projects and JPD demo intake, new ideas. All right, so this is Jira Product Discovery, and it's basically a bunch of ideas in lists. And unlike a regular Jira project, the project manager, because this is a team managed project, can just ad hoc create new fields as they want. So it's almost as easy as generating new columns in a spreadsheet to add information to these ideas. Each idea has a workflow as we would expect. So we have our traditional Jira status function here, and we can have a custom workflow. This is what you'd expect for ideas: new, initial review, discovery, backlog, delivery, impact tracking, and complete. Maybe we're not going to do the idea this year. Maybe we're not going to do it at all. But I can create all of these views. So I can have an initial review that is only going to show me things in the initial review status. So if I come here to a new idea and I take Express Checkout and I update its status to initial review, that's now going to show up over here, and I can use this to queue up all the work that my initial review team does. And then we get into the real heart of what's beautiful. We have other views such as, this is a list view, but now we're getting into an impact assessment. And so I can choose what my impact is based on a rough score. This is going to prioritize here. And as I attach insights to it, it's going to get a higher calculated score. And so what I can see is that, based on my rough swag estimate of impact and the number of insights, I should probably work on our new rewards program first. Or I can do an impact versus effort graph where I can chart impact over here and effort over here. And I can see that, again, our new rewards program is low effort and high impact. We're probably going to start on that one first. So again, multiple ways to visualize all of these ideas and prioritize them. And then you could save different stakeholder views. So same ideas now shown in a now, next, later format, which I think is so much more helpful than showing it in a planned work view in a Gantt chart, because we're still negotiating with our stakeholders about, capacity and what we can get done here. So, hey, we're working on this now. As soon as we have capacity, we're going to work on this next. This one's a little farther down. You tell me if you want to reprioritize this. We can also see a list of delivery status, and so we can tie the rewards programs to a. Let me say this again. We can tie this idea to work over in Jira, and then it'll show us how the Jira work is progressing against our idea. So I don't have to point my stakeholder into Jira anymore. I can just point them to this list of ideas that are focused on them, and they can see all their ideas and how they're progressing. Or if I do need to show them, an actual timeline, I can take my idea and I can put it on a timeline, but it's a rough timeline. It's not a guaranteed date. We're going to close it sometime in, Q3 here. If I did click into it, and if I looked in the connected delivery work, yeah, okay, now I can dive in and I can see the actual delivery work against it. But hopefully we're not getting our stakeholders any more granular than this. And we can also break things up into opportunities. Here I have opportunities that have potential solutions underneath them that are tied to company goals. um, I mean, this is really cool. You can get so many different visualizations to your stakeholders, all while communicating urgency and priority without having them in the weeds over in a Jira backlog somewhere. And lastly, I want to say that all of these views can be published internally or externally to non-licensed users. So you really don't have to worry about the cost of having somebody's visibility into their ideas. Now, if you want them to dive over to the Jira side, they'll need a Jira license, but that's a really high-level overview of a very powerful tool, but it's a very powerful front end to your portfolio intake and prioritization system. Okay. Let me just talk really quick about Valiantys. We are a Platinum Solution partner. If you'd like to talk to me or anybody else, feel free to grab this QR code, or you can send me an email if you have any questions about any of the stuff that we talked about. Oh, thank you so much, Kristen. So there's my email in the chat as well. And if you have any questions about free or paid training, again, we do a lot of webinars like this. I'm so sorry. I thought we had a Jira Align webinar. I guess we don't anymore. I apologize. Maybe that tells you where the world is going with Jira Align. But yeah, feel free to reach out. We also have a lot of free YouTube content as well. But for now, I'll hang around for a moment for Q&A. But before I answer any questions, I just want to say thank you so much for your kind attention and your time today. I know that your time is very valuable, and I hope that you found this a helpful overview of all of your potential options within the Atlassian ecosystem. So thank you for joining, and I'll wait around for any extra questions. Oh, we found potentially the webinar. Boy, if you found it, I really appreciate that. Oops. Can I copy that? Let's see. Oh, it is. Oh, good, good, good. We're still doing it. Okay, that makes me very happy. So yes, thank you for finding that. Yeah, you can join that. Jason does a great overview of Jira Align, and he's done a lot of different implementations over the years with a lot of large clients. So you'll find a lot about that product there. Any other questions? No worries, Kristen. It's still the new year. All right. Well, thank you all very much for your time and attention. I hope you have a great day. And please feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. Talk to you later.